Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, August 28, 2018. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, for which is the republic, for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On tonight's agenda, we have some invited guests to discuss Heritage Day. We have Weston and Sampson to discuss a DPW facility presentation. For discussion items, we're going to open the town warrant for August 28th. We have a request for the welfare fund. We're going to discuss the joint feasibility mission statement. We have some appointments. We're going to discuss public comment procedures and policies. And then we have a discussion with MPT Laboratories. And we're also going to execute 2 deeds. We have also tonight, we have to be out of this room by 7 p.m. So if everything goes accordingly, we're going to go downstairs to G07 and it should still be televised. So, right?
Downstairs?
G07, the basement, right? Where are we going then?
Stay here going to television.
I asked you that before we started. You said it would be okay to move.
But here,
Oh.
local.
So we will not be televised after 7 p.m. Our first guest tonight is Simi Kennedy. She's a member of the Bloomer Girls, and she's here to discuss some planning events for Heritage Day. Good evening.
Do we want the meeting minutes?
What's that?
Hi, Sam.
I'm trying to get the DPW televised. Got it.
Thank you for allowing us to come tonight. Just to correct things, I'm not a member of the Bloomer Girls, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm actually here on behalf of the Historical Society. We typically organize an annual event called Heritage Day. It's going to be held on Saturday, September 29th. This year, we're hoping, because we've had so many consecutive years of crappy weather, that this is our year of good weather. And a lot of events that happen predominantly at the Town Common, but things that also go on for the library, the United Parish, the fire department. There's a dance that night down at the senior center that is put on by the Bloomer Girls. And we're still confirming whether or not there'll be an event at the VFW. We have over 15 vendors and community groups that will be on the common with their wares and information that day. So it's a great place for people that maybe haven't had too much experience in town. It's a Saturday. You can come and see a lot of the different facilities. I always tell people it's never too early to start your Christmas shopping, so, come check out a few little things. We do have entertainment. Johnny Diamond is coming back, our local singer, who always gets a lot of people dancing in their chairs, if not up on their feet. And you may have read in the paper that the United Parish is this year going to do a town-wide yard sale. So they're going to have several yard sales around town and have a map for that. But they're also going to have, for those that are used to this, I did confirm today they are going to have their grill open so we can still get sausage and pepper sandwiches and whatever else they've ever sold, because I've never gotten over for their menu. And they're also going to have a dessert option in the afternoon to stop in and get dessert at the church. So we usually thank the Board of Selectmen. We usually get this one chance a year just to come in and let people know that it is coming up at the end of September. And we look forward to seeing a lot of people. It's a great community event. It's a great chance to meet your neighbors and find out a little bit more about the town that you live in or live next to. So I'd be happy to answer questions if anybody has any. Or
Any questions?
What time do the activities start?
well, the yard sales start as early as 7:30 in the morning. And most things, other than the dance, most things will be over between 2 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So the
What
dance,
time is the music?
I did not get a message today confirming exactly what time Johnny's going to sing, but it's usually around noontime because we try to have people there to have lunch and things. So.
Great.
But I'm not positive, and I believe the dance will be from 6 to 8, and that does require reservations just so they have enough refreshments and things. So.
Is the singer on the town common, weather permitting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. If the weather's not permitted, we'll be downstairs in the town hall. But we really would like to be outside for a change.
I do remember last year, it rained pretty good on that
I think it's
day.
been the past couple of years.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have. We appreciate the work you did, and it's September 29th.
September 29th, Saturday, yep.
We'll make sure we do some advertising on our behalf, some tweets or whatever we can do.
We can do that?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next agenda item was actually the town moderator to discuss electronic voting. I do not see him here tonight, so we're going to skip right to Weston and Sampson for their DPW facility presentation. Good evening, sir. Can you just introduce yourself for
Sure.
the record and the audience?
Sure, my name is Jim Mulberry from Weston and Sampson. I'm Vice President with our facilities group. And while he's getting the presentation up, I did bring a hard copy in the event we have any technical difficulties.
I don't need hard copy, I've got some.
This is actually updated, some minor updates if you'd like to have a copy.
Sure.
Nothing substantial, just some editorial changes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, while he's getting ready, I'm just gonna explain that, the previous DPW director, Vinnie, before Dennis came on board, myself, Vinnie, and a couple of the employees at the DPW, worked with Jeff to come up with a feasibility of what's the status of the DPW facility, and what are some things that we could do to make it working better. Jeff will be able to explain that a little bit more. The funding, we just did some research. The funding to do that feasibility was actually approved in May of 2012. It was $25,000, and it took us about 4 years to get to the point that we're at right now. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of that background, that it's been, this feasibility has been in the works for about 4 years. But Jeff knows the facility. He's going to be standing back there in order to show the PowerPoint and do his presentation.
Okay.
Yep, whenever you're ready, sir.
Excuse me?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. So, as mentioned, we've been at this feasibility study for quite some time, and so what I wanted to do was provide an overview of the work that's been prepared to date. And really, there's a couple of key aspects that I'd like to go through, and that starts with public works responsibilities. And that's important because that's really what drives this facility. We'll talk about why the town needs a new facility for anyone who visits this site and see the condition. Talk about what's proposed, and then we'll close with what are the benefits. And there's a lot of benefits to a project of this type, not only for the public works operations, but for the community as a whole. So with regard to the public works responsibilities, I could actually spend an entire evening presenting on what public works does, but I just wanted to highlight some of the key aspects. And I think the best way to sum it up is that the DPW, it's really that first line, the DPW touches the lives of the residents every day by maintaining the infrastructure that the community relies on. And that goes throughout the community, everything from maintaining approximately 80 miles of roadway, it's road surfacing, street sweeping, to flood prevention, managing the stormwater system, trimming of trees and road brush, maintaining the park, cemetery, and forestry, maintenance of the DPW fleet, as well as managing the maintenance of the wastewater collection and treatment and drinking water treatment and distribution. So if you listen to that list and you think about what you use on a daily basis, what everyone uses on a daily basis, Public Works is behind the scenes maintaining that infrastructure that everyone relies on. It's also important to note that they are on call 24 hours a day for any kind of incident or emergency. Some of the ones we all are well known, the snow and ice removal, that's a very key element to what they're responsible for, but also hurricane and windstorm cleanup, that's been pretty significant. Removal of road hazards, flooding, water main breaks, sewer main breaks. So anytime these emergencies occur, they're on call to respond to the needs of the community and to ensure that the other emergency services can respond to the community by maintaining that infrastructure, that roadway, those water systems as needed. And I think that APWA reporter really summed it up best when they said, Public Works are the first responders who are there until the emergency is over. And since 2009, DPWs have been classified as a first responder by the Department of Homeland Security. So there's really been a big industry shift to represent and acknowledge that Public Works is really key and one of the branches that the emergency services offer to a community.
And that's important because what we're really working towards with this concept, with this design, is to make the facility more efficient so that they can respond to the needs of the community quickly. With regard to why does the town need a new facility, we spent some time going through the existing facilities, and I wanted to highlight some of our observations. Number one, the existing main facility, it's undersized, and as a result, a portion of the operations are actually located in temporary trailers on site. And the responsibilities continue to increase over the years, but the facility has not kept pace. And this results in a facility that doesn't meet current code requirements and really has impacts on the efficiency of the operation, as well as the safety of the staff that are working within the conditions of some of these facilities. This is an example of the vehicle and equipment storage area that you can see in some of these photographs. And as you can see, they use every square inch of this facility to try to get this equipment undercover. And that's important because you as a community have invested in millions of dollars worth of equipment, and what they want to do is protect that equipment, put it inside in a minimally heated garage, allow it to last longer and respond to the needs more efficiently. And as you look through and as I walked around the space, what we found is that there's so much equipment that gets stored indoors that there's really no way to egress through the space. You have to weave your way in and out. So it's a safety issue for the staff, but also it really has the opportunity that vehicles could get impacted because it's such a tight space and damage. What we did find too is that although they do a great job of really packing them in like sardines in the building is not sufficiently sized to house all this multi-million-dollar fleet. And as a result, there's a lot of equipment that's either stored outdoors or it's just stored under a tent-like structure. It's essentially a fabric structure that's on the site. As we move into the facility and start to look at some of the support spaces, this next slide says employee support spaces are lacking for today's operations. And so your first question might be, why are we showing a vehicle storage area? But if you look at the center of your screen, you can see that that's actually the vehicle storage area / locker room. There's no place for lockers, and so the staff's basic amenity support space is actually out in the vehicle storage area. We also found that the employee break room that's shown in this photograph, it's very small. This is just a portion of the staff that are in that room. But more importantly, that's not just a break room, that's the break room, that's the meeting room, that's the training room, and that's the storm event room. So this is where the staff really is getting, it's the heart of the operation where the staff is coming every day to get their assignments. And in the summertime, you could have up to 12 staff with your seasonal employees, and during a storm event, you could have up to 30 staff that might be trying to occupy the space. Clearly, as you can see from this picture, you really can't fit 30 people within that space, and you find people are out and about in their vehicles or in the storage garage areas. And the vehicle maintenance area was not much better. It is undersized, it's poorly ventilated, has poor lighting, and just doesn't have the code-compliant shop circulation. You can see in the bottom right photograph that as you're trying to maintain a piece of equipment, there's really no space around that equipment to safely maintain it. This next slide, I tried to find an interior picture of a vehicle wash area, and unfortunately we could not. In fact, there is no space for vehicle washing inside, and as a result, this equipment does have to get washed down outdoors. The vehicle wash space is a very important aspect of these facilities. It extends the life of the vehicle by removing the highly corrosive materials. It reduces the vehicle maintenance costs by maintaining it and getting those corrosive materials off. It provides safe conditions for the employees. The photograph shows someone washing in nice weather, but you can imagine after a snowstorm they have to wash down this equipment or else it may not be functional by the next snowstorm, and that's done outdoors in cold weather, and that produces slip conditions for the staff. It's important to have an interior wash bay from an industry standards perspective. It's what every DPW is doing. But more importantly, Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, Mass DEP, also has a requirement that if you're washing your vehicles, it has to be done indoors so that you can collect that runoff so it does not enter the stormwater system. In summary, a lot of text, but just to summarize the key issues, the building doesn't meet today's building codes, today's plumbing codes, or mechanical codes, and these pose operational inefficiencies and safety concerns for the staff. So it was important for us to go through this process, understand what those deficiencies are, because our goal is to come back with a plan that addresses these deficiencies now and into the future. So now we get into the fun stuff, and that is what is proposed. And the key, having been involved in over 100 public works facility projects in Massachusetts, is that every community operates a little bit differently. So our goal wasn't to come in here and necessarily tell you how to do it. We wanted to interview your staff, understand your operations, understand your needs, and from there, through those interviews with the staff, we were able to develop programming sketches. And as you can see from some of the examples on this slide, we sketched everything from offices to locker rooms to the vehicle maintenance area to the vehicle and equipment storage area. Through that process, we had an original facility program broken down by each of the major operating areas, from offices to workshops to vehicle storage, that totaled about 32,750 square feet. We then went through a process of trying to fine-tune it, see where we could squeeze it and bring it down a little bit without impacting operations. We brought that down to about 31,950 square feet. But really what we felt was, the diamond in the rough for this project is that you have an existing building that is suitable for reuse and readaptation. And so our plan was to keep that existing building and provide some minor renovations so that it can function as a lower use, such as vehicle and equipment storage, therefore reducing your overall new construction total, and that in essence reduces your overall construction costs. So we see about a 28% reduction in overall new space by reusing the existing building. One of the big questions is, you look at the overall square footage, you see the largest number in there is the vehicle and equipment storage at about 18,000 square feet. So through that process, what we typically like to do is explain why is it important to have equipment indoors. A lot of people say, hey, cut that space, but that's a very low-cost space, very inexpensive to construct, and it's protecting a multi-million-dollar fleet. But because we've been asked that question over and over again, we have, over the years, assembled just a brief summary of some of the key elements of why it's important to put that equipment indoors in a minimally heated garage. It's only heated to 45 degrees. And the first item that we identify is employee safety. You can see in the photograph here of an employee that is cleaning off a windshield, and essentially they have to stand on the running board and on the tire to reach across that windshield. So you can imagine in slippery conditions that poses safety concerns for staff. Public safety, very important. We talked about that earlier. If the equipment is stored outdoors and it gets iced over, or a brake line freezes and it can't respond to a downed tree, to an ice condition, then you essentially will create a public safety issue by not allowing that equipment to make its way out onto the street to serve its needs. Protection of equipment is a very important one. Again, I keep stressing this is a very expensive fleet. If you leave that equipment outdoors, it will deteriorate, and it will be essentially reduced from service much earlier than if you keep it inside. And we've actually done a case study where one community purchased 3 large dump trucks at about $180,000 a truck. They only had room to put one indoors, and they kept the other 2 outdoors. Over the life of that equipment, those 2 that were outdoors were retired early because they had deteriorated so much, and they were in such bad condition they could only be sold as scrap. The one that they kept indoors, again, all purchased at the same time, lasted another 3 years. When it reached its mileage as planned for replacement, it was in such good shape they were able to sell it at auction. So there's definitely a benefit to protecting this investment that you've made in this fleet. Stormwater pollution control is an important one as well, because equipment that is stored outdoors that has a drip, a leak, a broken hose, a spill, that will get into the stormwater system. Whereas if you put it inside, that will get into a trench drain system, and it'll ultimately go to a sewer or to a tight tank without entering the stormwater system. And we've done numerous cost-benefit analyses to determine, is it going to be more cost-effective over the life of that building? And we found that the cost to construct, maintain, and operate a vehicle storage garage compared to the cost associated with putting everything outdoors is significantly less expensive. Meaning, if you leave it outdoors, you're going to have increased maintenance costs, decreased life expectancy. You're going to have increased non-productive labor, operational impacts, employee safety, and environmental impacts. So it will cost you actually 2 to 3 times more over the life of that building to leave that equipment outdoors, because you're going to be constantly replacing it, whereas you can extend its life and reduce maintenance costs if you put it indoors. And then finally, through efficient operations, we've done field tests. And ultimately, what it shows you is that a vehicle that's stored outdoors will start not as quick, and you have a lot more exhaust, whereas when it's indoors, you'll start up and it's ready to go within 2 minutes. But we've seen a difference of about 20 to 25 minutes when equipment's left outdoors in very cold environments, where it takes that much longer to get it out on the road and warmed up. So taking all that into to the next phase, which was really developing the concepts. We took the site that's shown here at 100 Pleasant Street, outlined in red, and we created boxes of each of those programming elements that I showed you earlier. We began the process of piecing together those boxes on the site to come up with multiple alternatives. And I'm just going to flash them quickly on the screen in front of you, but the point of showing you these is that we went through a series of options. We evaluated each option with the DPW to identify the advantages and disadvantages, both from an operational perspective as well as from a cost perspective. Through that process, we would take the advantages of each one of the alternatives and begin piecing them together, ultimately coming up with our preferred concept. And that's shown on the screen in front of you now. And the areas that are highlighted in yellow represent new construction. The areas that are highlighted in gray represent existing that's going to be reused. And through that process, too, we identified the different uses. And this just shows you some photographs of recently completed facilities where we'll have improved office areas, very basic amenities for the office staff, improved employee facilities, locker, shower, toilet, proper break and training room, and trade shops that aren't fully congested with equipment. We'll also have a dedicated vehicle wash bay, a larger vehicle maintenance bay with proper circulation space around it and proper height for lifting of vehicles, as well as an extended vehicle and equipment storage area. The goal here is to do stacked parking to reduce the overall footprint of that storage garage, but provide doors on either side of the building where possible to increase the operational effectiveness of getting the equipment in and out of the facility. And we're also proposing an area on site to provide bulk material storage. There are a lot of materials that are used by the DPW on a daily basis, as well as a town-wide fueling facility consisting of 2 10,000-gallon above-ground storage tanks. So the next part of the presentation goes into the costs. And what we've done is taken this program and really compared it to what we've seen for these facilities. Because we've been involved in them for many years, we're building 1 to 2, in some cases 3 of these a year. So we have a good sense of what those costs are. And I broke down the cost estimate into 2 components, the first being the new and renovated facility component, and the second component being the fueling facility. Seeing that that's a town-wide facility, I wanted to separate that out to show you what is the impact for Public Works and what's the impact for the town-wide facility. So on the cost summary for the new and renovated facility, we break down each of the major components from the building, new construction costs, to the renovation costs. We also list out some of the key elements that make these a little bit unique from other buildings that you might have in town, and that's your industrial support equipment, which is your wash equipment, your vehicle maintenance equipment such as vehicle lifts, tailpipe exhaust systems, fluid distribution systems, all systems that are standard for these types of facilities from an operational and safety perspective. We also list your site development costs, and this is all of the DEP mandated stormwater systems, site clearing, site lighting, paving, and curbing. These are typically a little bit on the higher side because you have larger circulation aisles for the overall operation for the larger equipment. And then due to the early nature of the project, we are carrying an estimating contingency as well as some escalating it out to 2019. So your subtotal construction cost is about $9.5 million. And then below that is your soft costs, and these are the costs generally of doing business in accordance with the Massachusetts general laws for public bidding, from your A&E fees to your permitting and testing, printing, furnishings, and communications. And then finally a construction contingency, which is standard to carry through any construction project. So your total for the construction costs and your soft costs is approximately $11.8 million. Now I highlighted that $297 square foot number for construction because I wanted to show you a comparison to other facilities constructed over the last 4 years. And this is a list of facilities that were actually bid and constructed, or in some cases are under construction. And we've escalated all of these costs out to 2019 and developed an average cost per square foot, which is approximately $360 a square foot. And these are all very basic pre-engineered metal buildings, nothing elaborate in these facilities. And we then compared it to the cost estimate that we developed for you, which is at $297 a square foot. So the first question is, why is it so much lower? And as I mentioned earlier, really that diamond in the rough is that we're going to reuse that existing structure, repurpose it, and therefore we have less new construction, lower renovation costs, and that results in about an 18% reduction in the cost of the project if we were to otherwise build it all new. So that's a bonus that we feel would be beneficial to the project. One of the questions that we get on many of these projects is, there's no way it costs $350 a square foot or $300 a square foot. And a lot of people will say it should only be $100 a square foot. So this is a table that lists history, actual average bid prices for public works facilities. So back in 2000, when we really started constructing these, we saw costs at about 96, call it $100 a square foot. So you can see over the years, as escalation has been impacting these costs, we're now up into the average of 325 to 360 escalated out a year. And so what does that really mean for you as a community, and what is the cost of waiting is what a lot of people will ask me. And there is a significant cost. If you take the last 5 years and you average out what that increase has been, we've seen the costs increase approximately 122% over that time that we were building them back in 2012, 2013. Again, these are all very similar, comparable facilities. So if you take the current project cost at about $11.8 million, and you escalate that out using that straight line escalation, it would put your project in 5 years at about 14.5 for the exact same project that we're presenting today. If you go 10 years out, you might be up to 17.6. That doesn't take into consideration any market spikes, which at this point in time with the tariff discussions, things like that, there are potential market spikes that we're just unsure of what those will be at this time. So there is a cost of waiting, and I just wanted to give you a sense of what you might expect over time. The second component, component 2, is the townwide fueling system. Again, we broke this out similar to the building costs. We have the new fueling system, the two 10,000-gallon above-ground tanks, and estimating contingencies, soft costs, and construction contingencies, and that's approximately $1.4 million. We've done payback analyses over the years because a lot of people say, well, why don't we just fuel off-site? Some communities do that. We find that that's infrequently done, and for several reasons. One of the main reasons is you have operations in this community that need 24-hour fueling services. So if power goes down and fuel stations lose their power and you can't fuel up, you can't maintain your roads, you can't respond to a fire, you can't respond to a police emergency need. So there's a very important component to having control of that facility so you can continue your operations, especially during emergency events. Also, what we find is that there is a savings because you're not paying taxes or paying the sale price of the local station. And through our past analysis, we find that it's anywhere from a 10 to 15 year payback period on a fuel system like that. So once you get to that 10 to 15 years, you'll be ahead of the game after investing in this fuel system. And these tanks are warranted for 20 plus years, so you have a significant life, and with proper maintenance, you can get longer use out of that. And then in closing, just some of the benefits. Again, I could probably spend the whole meeting talking about what the benefits are, but I just wanted to highlight some of the four main points. And the first is this facility, these upgrades would provide a code-compliant, safe work environment for your town employees, which currently is lacking due to the substandard and undersized facility. It would continue to protect your multi-million-dollar investment in your vehicles and equipment, extending their life, making them more efficient, reducing your maintenance costs. Provides much more efficient workspace and response times for DPW staff. You don't have to have them come in 2 hours early to prepare for a storm if you're able to set up that equipment the night before. And it eliminates the need to invest in Band-Aids in a facility that is currently substandard and undersized. So the goal here is don't just keep dumping money into it just to get by for the next 2 or 3 years. Invest in it now, expand it, renovate it, and make it a 50-year plus building. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, sir. I'll open up to my colleagues. Would you like to start, Brett? Questions?
When was the existing DPW built?
What was that, in the 80s? I don't have the exact date. I think it was in the 80s.
90s.
Was it 90s?
Late 90s.
Late 90s?
Well, pretty early 90s.
Okay. Did you do any analysis of the project cost or square footage for a DPW based on town population or road miles? I see the square footage for building costs, and I see the investments that these other communities have made in DPWs, some significantly more, some significantly less. I know that wasn't the point of the slide, but it did make me question what those costs were relative to, again, road miles and/or population.
Yes, that's a great question, and we've been asked that in the past, and we've looked at comparisons by just road miles or by acreage. What we found is that it's not apples to apples to use that comparison. What really drives these facilities in each community is the number of staff, the number of vehicles, and the number of divisions. You might have a big community that only has highway, and they have a separate sewer department, they have a separate water department, so therefore it might be a big community, but they have a small facility. So over the years, we've established those guidelines, those three elements to do comparisons. And we actually plug this into an overall comparison, and we use that as a kind of a gut check to make sure the program that we're presenting is in line with what we see for other communities. And I can provide that as a separate document, but it is in line as you look at the graph table that we've prepared, showing that the proposed facility is appropriate for the makeup of your Department of Public Works.
Yeah, both sets of those data would be useful, both
Sure.
the analysis based on miles and population as well as the analysis you did yourselves.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, we include in there. I'm
One other
sorry.
component, if I could just interrupt you for just a second. I think an important piece to that as well is your budget. And I think, like, as I look at the comparisons that we have here, Hopkins at the top of the list, and of course it's a neighboring town to ours, their budget's approximately 4 times our budget. So it's much easier for Hopkins, say, an $85 million budget, where we're a $23 million budget, again, round figures. But it's much easier for Hopkins to build a 42,000 square foot facility versus us at 31,000. And that's kind of something that just jumps out to me. So I think if we could kind of weave that into that document that Selectman Simus asked about,
So cost of construction relative to the overall town budget.
relative
Sure.
to the budget, yeah.
And the DPW budget.
And DPW.
Because
budget.
people, I think you're right. I think people will ask these questions, and certainly if anything like this ever got to town meeting, you can expect people will ask those questions, so we want to be prepared with the answers for folks.
Sure, I can put that together for you.
And then on this graph that you have, you don't have the total cost of construction, so would I just assume then that the 42,410 square feet times the cost would be the total?
So you're talking total project cost relative?
Yes.
So it's typically, the soft costs usually average 25 to 28% of the construction cost. I do have that data as well, and I can provide you the total project cost for comparison purposes.
Okay.
You mentioned something about stacked parking. That was just a term I wasn't familiar with. What was that?
So many facilities will design their vehicle storage drive with the center drive for a while, where vehicles drive into a storage drive and they'll pull off to the right or to the left, and then when they need that equipment, they'll back into the aisle and drive out. That's a good system to have if you have the space. It does add to square footage, and what we program here is that you'll have vehicles nose to nose, essentially driving one side through an overhead door, driving the other side through an overhead door. That eliminates that whole 30-foot wide aisle. It helps to reduce the footprint of the building. And it's appropriate as long as you have proper amount of doors, and the concepts that we have sufficient doors to make sure that they can respond quickly to the needs.
And the proposal has space for all the existing equipment as well as some future growth.
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't program a lot of future growth in. We typically find that there's a one-to-one replacement on vehicles. We've provided growth within the employee support spaces because that doesn't have a major impact. So there is, in an attempt to keep the overall facility size down, we haven't programmed any bays that won't be unused. We envision that if you were to add 2 pieces of equipment 5 years from now that you didn't have before, then there would be some jockeying around of equipment. What could go outside under the fabric structure, because we're planning on reusing that fabric structure. So maybe a lower cost vehicle that's due to be replaced in a year or 2 goes outside, you put the newer equipment in. So I think there'll be a little bit of jockeying around as you add equipment.
Yeah, and just a thought, if you're going to build a 50-year building, you probably want to account for some growth.
Sure. No, I like to hear that. Usually we're forced the other way, but I think that's a great point.
I don't know if anybody's going to pay for it, but it's that analysis.
I can break that out with a separate cost so you know what it is.
And a quick question, getting to the fuel island. You said about a 10 to 15 year payback. What were you basing that on? How many gallons of fuel or percentage of your savings, or?
Yes, it's an analysis that bases on the usage and the different types of vehicles, what their usage is, and then what the cost is for you to buy it as a community at a reduced price versus going to a local gas station that will be selling it at a higher rate. And so we can actually, we're in the process of putting together a detailed analysis on that. We can provide that as additional backup as well.
Okay. I mean, just roughly, do you know per gallon, cost per gallon? Is it, I think we may have had this conversation once before, is it 40 or 50 cents a gallon cheaper when you buy it that kind of bulk?
So in the recent one, we saw it somewhere around 35
cents per gallon?
cents.
Okay. And then I guess the last question, the above-ground tanks, 10,000 gallons, those would be gas and diesel?
Correct.
And what is the life expectancy of those tanks?
So they have a 20-year warranty on the tanks themselves, and we find with proper maintenance, they're very durable, they're protected, you can get even longer out of there. It's hard to say exactly how much, but it's going to be greater than 20 is my estimation. You'd probably see easily 30.
Okay.
Anything else, Steve?
That's it for now.
Two quick ones. So, is it possible that the market becomes worse and so the building becomes cheaper to build in the future? You had mentioned that the prices have been going up over the past 10 years, but so is the market. So I didn't know if there was a possibility of prices going down and the cost going down.
Absolutely. It would be bad for everyone else when the economy has a correction or if we enter a recession. We did see that in 2008 where we saw a significant drop in these prices because contractors just wanted to stay in business. They cut all their margins. We saw a slight drop, not a huge drop, but then it just leveled out for a couple of years. Then after that we saw these significant spikes as the catch-up took place. Right now, we're seeing it somewhat stable. We actually opened up bids 2 months ago and had very favorable low bid, which was surprising, but now we're starting to see some warning signs of escalation due to tariffs. So it's a little bit unknown right now, but there is that opportunity, that potential that could happen.
Did you do an analysis of the cost of buying another trailer with a bathroom and putting up another fabric tent?
I did not. We can
It'd
if
be
we...
great to understand that as an alternative as well.
Okay.
All set?
Thank you, sir.
I might have missed it during the presentation. How long is the projected life expectancy of a DPW facility?
50 years is what we designed for, and what we like to tell everyone is that with proper maintenance, these buildings will last longer. We're using a high level. These aren't your old-fashioned metal buildings that have that bagged insulation. These are 4-inch factory foam insulated panels, high energy savings by using those panels, and we build the base of the building with durable materials, concrete and masonry, so that with proper maintenance, you'll get a very significant lifespan out of this building. You'll have to replace systems over the year, mechanical systems, things like that, but the overall superstructure will last significantly longer than that.
Then just to kind of go off what my colleague, Mr. Simons was saying, I know it's a 31,000 square foot building, but I was talking to Mr. Westgate at the beginning. Basically, the space is maxed out the day you moved in. Like, how much would you consider?
As Jeff indicated, if we ended up expanding down the road and we purchased some additional equipment, some roadside mowing we don't have right now, or a street sweeper or catch basin cleaner, we would have to jockey the equipment inside the building around. We may or may not be able to accommodate it. We may end up outside.
Where do you, so this might be something for you in your free time. It's like, try to figure out where we're going to be in 20, 25 years to maybe...
I hope to be retired.
Might need some suggestions. I mean, I want to go bigger, may want to go smaller. So.
Understood.
I think liquidating, as we've done in the past, we seem to have a pretty good dialogue now as far as liquidating some equipment, so that's always another question, is how much is currently in stock, undercover, that we do need or don't need?
But I heard
That's another-
Mr. Westgate was saying earlier in the year that we might need to add another large dump truck for the plow routes.
We do. We're short on our power and fan,
So that's what I'm talking about, space like that.
Right.
our performance versus miles of road.
Would just be good to have all the numbers. And is it cheaper to do an addition or to do it up front? Or if you were to make this bigger, is it cheaper to do an addition in 5 years or to?
No, it'd be much cheaper to do it now. Additions, as you're building onto foundations, have to be structurally isolated. You get double foundations. Definitely would be more cost effective, especially in a storage garage, which is the most inexpensive space to do that component now. And just as a side note, one thing that we've done successfully with a lot of communities that did want that expansion but weren't sure if they could afford it is you just make that a bid alternate, so you don't have to commit to that price. You get your base bid, and then you have a bid alternate to extend it 2 bays. And if you get competitive prices and it's within the budget that's been approved, then you can get that bay now. And that's been very effective in other communities.
I think what you're hearing from all of us is that you evaluated alternatives for configuration of an existing square footage and a proposed need. What I think would be useful is seeing alternatives in the scope and scale and size, right? Both larger and smaller. To build a 50-year building that's going to be at capacity at day one doesn't seem like it has the most amount of foresight, especially if we're thinking of buying a new building. We're just going to buy another tent, and then when we run out of office space, we're going to buy another trailer in 5 years. I don't think we want to put ourselves in that situation, particularly making this kind of an investment, but also seeing some alternatives that would cut the price a little bit for the taxpayers is worth evaluating. So I think the options that the town is going to want to see are those types of options, both long-term planning, but also more fiscally responsible, and then they can make a choice.
So I'm thinking, as what you're saying, is not necessarily any bigger or any more expensive, but we definitely got to see something less expensive and smaller. I mean, $12 million.
I think you need to have all your options both ways.
Yeah, it's just a lot of.
I agree. I mean, it would seem foolish to me to spend $12 million and have a building that's already outdated and outsized as soon as you put it up. If it's a 50-year building, you should be thinking, I mean, if I buy a house for my growing family, I either buy a house that I can put an addition onto, so make it so that we can add onto it instead of just adding tents, or I think about upgrading over time. So I think you have to make a decision about what you want to do.
Spark my interest on that one. So one of the other things that we need to think about and be cognizant of, it's not just about space. It's not just about putting the trucks inside. It's about bringing a facility up to code that is not up to code. It's about providing enough restroom facilities and locker room space for the staffing so that we can treat our staff correctly, we can increase our efficiencies. It's also, even when you talk about the square footage and trying to compensate for what may or may not happen as the town continues to grow, at a minimum, you're protecting the large investment that the town has already committed to and made with the equipment that you have on site now, which to a certain degree we're not doing today. You also have regulations and mandates that we're not following. And the DEP is making their rounds, and they are fining some towns for stuff of this nature. Upton is a smaller scale community. I don't think we're high on their radar. I'm sure they're aware, though, that we don't have an indoor washing facility. That's illegal. You shouldn't be washing equipment covered in salt, calcium chloride outside in the environment. So these are all the other things that come into mind when I think about the reasons why we need to have a facility adequate for the town itself right now. Not just expansion. If we can't meet the expansion, then we go smaller. I don't think that's a good idea, but that's my opinion. I thought I'd share that.
Any follow-up?
No, I have nothing else.
Anything, Mr. Manager?
I mean, I don't have too much to add other than, as Selectman Simons has pointed out in the past, that there are a number of capital needs that have to be addressed, and this is just one of them. And so I don't think we can wait much longer. with this facility or a proposed other municipal facility, I think we have to start making decisions now. We can't wait 5 years and and these costs rise by 122%. So, I'm hoping to hear that we move this project forward in some fashion. Certainly with Jeff's analysis, we get the information back. We'll have more information to go by so we can make good decisions based upon good information. But I don't think we should sit back for the next 8 months to hear that information. I think we should try to continue to keep a foot on the accelerator so we can at least advance the discussion.
Yeah, I think it's important to put our foot on the accelerator of having a capital plan and understanding what those investment alternatives are, what the capital investment alternatives and requirements are going to be over the next 5 years or so. I know you sent me that updated capital plan, so we should take a look at that and use that as a starting point. But I do think that people need to have a perspective of what the additional significant investments we're going to need to make over the next 5 or 10 years are before they can get their arms around making a significant investment in any, whether it was this or any other, police, fire, DPW, libraries, town centers, commercial infrastructure to go up 140. All of those things require significant investment. And so I think we need to make decisions with all of those things in context.
Yeah, and I would say coupled with the town's ability to afford those investments. So I don't think we've had a discussion, at least in the first year that I've been here, as to the existing debt and the debt that's coming off, interest rates, and how interest rates will play into any bonds that we take out. So, yeah, I agree. We have to have much larger 40,000-foot discussions before we start making these types of investments.
No, and that's a great point. Obviously, any of these investments are a function of the town supporting making the investments and prioritizing them over tax cuts and/or deciding to make tax cuts instead of these investments. So I think all of those things need to be considered.
I agree with both of you. So. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Do I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
This was, the current facility predates the school right next to it. When the school was built, we raised the elevations of Maple Avenue to accommodate sewerage to get it from the school down Maple Avenue to the treatment plant. The current facility, all the wastewater and salt and everything, all stays on the property. Their own, septic systems.
Mm-hmm.
Is this proposal assume that you get the elevation to go on gravity to the treatment plant?
We haven't completed the design on that aspect, but we've had that discussion with the goal of trying to come up with the ability to get that sewage associated with floor drains and toilets into the sewer system. Might require a small lift station depending on overall inverts, but that'll be part of the next phase of design where we'll get the survey and design the building and identify what our outgoing invert is and what our connection invert would be and try to work out those details. So that's something we've had discussions on, we just haven't gotten that far in the design to determine that.
So that cost would be in addition to what we're seeing here now?
Nope, one of the items that we had in our estimate was a cost estimating contingency. So there's a lot of things that we don't know about yet, and it was about $1.1 million worth of estimating contingencies and escalation. So as different design elements are identified that might add a cost, that estimating contingency comes down, offsets it, so we don't anticipate something like that would have any increase to the cost.
The other observation, Mr. Chairman, would be this, that I forget exactly how much we pay for that mobile office that's down there. And it's been there for 20 years, 19 years?
Do we own that? I think we still rent it.
Well, we rented it for a long time.
I think it's rent to own,
Rent to own.
lease. We lease it.
It's a lease.
It's a lease.
I guess one other quick question in the graph, I don't have it in front of me right now. Where was the engineering fees in that? Is that in the soft cost?
That's in the soft cost, correct. Engineering and OPM fees, only project manager fees are all built in.
I appreciate your time, sir. We're on a tight agenda, so we got to move, open this room for the planning board.
Thank you.
Take a quick recess, and then we're going to open up downstairs on the ground floor.
You can't go back much further on that property because there's a pond back there.
Well, like we said, this is just conceptual, and
But you could add a couple of bays to that, to the back of that building.
well, when we develop a committee, that would be all stuff for them to.
And we asked them to look at alternatives, so I think that was one of the key outcomes of the meeting, was to get alternatives.
Right.
That's enough on that subject. Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
how you doing tonight, sir?
Fine, and you?
Good. We asked you to come tonight because there's been some discussion about looking at electronic voting and the possibilities, so you run the special and annual town meeting, so
Right.
we'd really like to have your input.
Okay, so, did you want me to just sort of give a general overview of what it is, or ask, or answer specific questions, how you want to format it?
If you want to give an overview,
Okay.
then we can go from there.
Great, okay, so, just so you know, the reason why this came up wasn't because I initiated it. I talked with the town clerk about a month ago, and they said that you had been talking about it, and that you wanted me to gather some data and to talk to you about it. So, what is electronic voting? Well, if you think about it, what it is, it's pretty straightforward. You have a town meeting, and instead of voting yays and nays, you would vote using a clicker. Okay, that's essentially what electronic voting is. It's actually been talked about by towns over the past 10 to 15 years, and I'd say there's anywhere from a dozen to 24 towns that already do use it. Some open town meetings, some representative town meetings. The real question that you have to ask yourself before you seriously consider whether you want to have electronic voting is there a need to have it? Now, different people might have a different perspective on a need to have it. But from my perspective and from talking to other moderators, and every time, and each year, all the moderators, not all, but many moderators meet at the annual Moderators Association meeting. And for the past 5 or 6 years, this has been the hottest topic. So what I've gleaned from talking with other moderators is whether there's a need or not, you have to ask yourself the following question. How many town meetings do you have in a year? How many people attend those town meetings? 100, 200, 500. How many difficult, controversial issues come up at those town meetings? And then ultimately, how many close votes do you have, or let's say secret ballots or standing votes do you have? Those are a lot of the things that drive whether or not to really consider electronic voting. And one other thing, which doesn't affect us, but it does affect some, is for a representative town meeting, the whole idea of electronic voting takes a little bit of a different tack, because you know exactly how many machines or little clicker things you'll need. Because if you have a representative town meeting, you have like 140 people, that's what you get, and you know that's what you need. The open town meeting, you could have 100, 200, 1,000 possibly. So those are the things you have to, 40, right, minimum. So those are the things you have to really kind of think about. And the one thing I haven't mentioned yet is the overall cost. So towns that run it now, yearly costs run anywhere from a minimum of $30,000 up to about $80,000. The reason for that is, it isn't just simply buying a bunch of clickers or renting a bunch of clickers. You have to have the people who know how to do this, how to run it, how to put it together. Because the thing you've got to make sure you have, and the people have to have 100% confidence in, is when they press a yes or a no on that little clicker, that they know that's what the vote is. Okay? So when we think about technology, in some respects, and I'm maybe saying something that's beyond my technological know-how, but my understanding is the way it works right now with the companies who do the electronic voting, they have a little keypad that looks something like this, let's say, right? And it's run on a local area network. Okay? It's not run on the internet open environment. Do you follow what I'm saying? So it's all local. Because it is, it's easier to make sure that what you're voting, you know that's what it is. Okay? Once you get onto the super technology, then there's a, let's say, a greater possibility of somebody monkeying what somebody how they may have voted. So that's the one thing that you need to keep in the back of your mind, is that the way the technology runs now, it's not on the World Wide Web, it's all within the room. So even though the clickers aren't connected by wires, it's connected with a local area network. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? Okay, good. Let's see. The other thing to think about, and for some people this has been a drive to do it, is because it saves time. Well, let's think about that. The last really close vote we had on something was the Sweet William Farm. It took us about 15 or 20 minutes to have that vote. So yes, on that evening when we voted, if we had electronic voting, it would have taken 30 seconds. We would have had the vote, bingo, you're done. But the flip side of that is the following. 90 to 95% of our votes are, there's a motion, no discussion, I get the FinCom recommendation, all those in favor say aye, aye, no, no, we move on, boom. Happens real fast, right? If you have electronic voting for every single vote, it's going to be 30 seconds of, how do you want to vote on this? And you wait. So for every single vote, you have to give the same amount of time for people to vote on how they think about something. All right. Now, you might say to yourself, well, why can't you on those really simple, no discussion votes just give people like 5 seconds? Well, I'm not going to make that judgment call whether I should or shouldn't allow 30 seconds, let's say, to vote on something. Now, I use 30 seconds because that's the pretty much standard amount of time that moderators allow people to vote with their clicker. Because if you've heard a 20-minute discussion about something and you're done, now it's time to vote, you want to think about it just a little bit more. What if I do? Oops, I don't want to do that. So right now, pretty much the standard rule is to give people 30 seconds to vote. Now, we can make it 10 seconds if you want. I don't care. You can make it 5 seconds, I suppose. But if you make it 5 seconds, people can get all panicky. They press the wrong button. Okay? So there's those things you have to think about. So, I've been talking about 5 minutes now. Some of you might be thinking, gee, I don't think Dave really wants to do this electronic voting thing. I'm not against electronic voting. But again, the question is there a need to do it? In the town of Wayland, where it started, there is a need. And they have it. And I saw it work one night. It was the night they voted to vote their DPW garage. It had been like...
Coincidentally.
Literally, they had a DPW garage that goes back to the 1930s. And for 50 years they've been trying to get one. And they just never could. Well, the meeting I went to was the one where they voted on the DPW garage. It was good discussion. It was heavy discussion, back and forth, you know. And then it's like, let's vote on it. And people pressed buttons and boom, within 30 seconds, they had the vote. Nice. If they had a standing vote, it would have been 15 or 20 minutes. That's where you'd save the time. But all those other votes, like I said, you're not going to save time. So it's not a time saver. So don't think of it from that perspective, like it's going to save time. Now, the other positive thing is it's totally secret. You're right. When you have a standing vote, you have to stand there and you get your neighbor next to you. Even on a voice vote, sometimes you think, the guy next to me, I don't want them to know how I voted. So that's a good thing about it. It's totally anonymous, okay? And the way it's set up right now for open town meetings, you do the vote, you call the call, whatever the number is, then once I press a button, everything's clear. So how you voted on your keypad is gone. So no one knows how you individually voted, okay? So there's some positives, there are some negatives depending upon your point of view, but again, the thing you have to ask yourself, is there a need? We have 2 town meetings a year. We don't, believe it or not, some might disagree with this, but I talk to a lot of moderators. We don't have a lot of really heavy-duty controversial issues, as much as we might think we do sometimes. Again, the last really close vote was that Sweet William Farm one, okay? And that was 2011, all right? That's not to say we haven't had secret ballots and we haven't had some standing votes. We have. But you say to yourself, how many times a year are we going to need this sort of thing? The towns that have it, the moderators that I've talked to love having it. Westboro has it now. Framingham had it until they became a city. Okay, and there's other towns that have it as well. Mostly representative, but open as well. So again, it's a question of cost, need, and also, I mean, the folks have to be comfortable with with the technology. And that will take a year or so to get done as well. And the logistics. It's a lot of extra work for the town clerk, a lot of extra work for the moderator, just getting things set up. You could buy it or rent it. Most towns rent it, and the reason why they rent it is because, quite frankly, storage. You have to say to yourself, what's the largest town meeting we're gonna have? And if there's a controversial issue, that's when you're gonna get the people. That's when you're gonna maybe need these things. So you can't just say, oh, we'll just buy 100 of these or whatever. No, you're not gonna need these when you have 100 people at a town meeting. You're gonna need this when you have 700 or 800 people, and it's a controversial issue. So that's the tricky thing about open town meeting, is that you don't really know what the maximum number is for that. Whereas for the representatives, you kind of know that already. You have a max, whatever that number happens to be. I'm kind of getting repetitive, so if anybody has any questions at all, I'll be glad to answer
Got a
them.
bunch now there. So, I just wonder, where did you get that $30,000 to $80,000? Is that buying or renting?
That's, I think either way you go with it. It's more if you buy, but again, you don't know exactly how. What you're really buying, it's less the hardware, it's more the software and the people to run it. You just can't buy a bunch of these things and have the folks in town run it. It's the people who you buy it from have the people who know how to do it.
So we couldn't go and borrow Westboro's.
You know what, I suppose we could maybe, but then you have to be able to say, okay, do you know how to run it? And can you guarantee that that stuff's gonna work? Okay. The town of Wayland was really the first one to do this. They put together a big committee, and they answered like a million different. I was shocked at the report that they had on this whole thing. Okay, there's an awful lot of questions. I think the most important question is guaranteeing to as close to 100% as you can get, convincing people that what they press is there, and that's going to go there. Okay. Now, I'm sure that every town that's done this, and they've done it, and it's what, if you say yes, it's yes, and if you say no, it's no. I'm not questioning that at all. But the people have to believe that. Okay, that's really important. I also know there's the possibility of, well, why not just use the iPhones? Can you do that? You know, maybe the technology exists for that. Well, here's the issue. A, does everyone have an iPhone? Right. The answer is no. B, if they don't, how do you deal with those people? Do you buy the, let's say, the handheld stuff for them? So let's say you have 90 people with iPhones, 10 people with the little things. I don't know if you're going to want to have a company who's going to want to do that. I don't think any town yet does that. So I certainly would want to be the first one to do that, to be honest with you.
Do you think this system encourages people to vote differently? Do you think they're more honest, or do you think they're more...
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. Let me put it to you this way. If it was me, I'd say no. Because if I'm going to vote on something, I'm going to vote. I don't care. You know. Now, those of you who don't remember, before I was moderator, Mr. Flaherty, I had a lot of things to say. And I spoke my mind. I voted how I voted. Okay? So for me, it wouldn't make a difference. Would it for some people? I'm sure it would. Because not everybody has that, whatever. So it might. It might. Everything would be a secret ballot, essentially, which I have no problem with, by the way. I have no problem with that at all. It's just that, is it worth it given, you know, the need? You know, so.
It's probably not much of an education. You could, a couple minutes slide in the beginning of the meeting to show everybody how to use it. It's just a yes and no button.
Pretty much that's it, yeah. I think I mean...
But can you change your vote? Let's say...
well, that's where the time...
Let's say you hit the wrong button. Are you locked in?
Good. The way it works right now, at least my understanding of it is, you've got a certain amount of time, whatever that time is. Let's say it's 30 seconds, just because it seems like that's the standard that towns use. You have 30 seconds to do whatever you want, okay? But once it hits 30, the last button you pressed, that's what the vote is. Okay? So if you vote yes and you make a mistake, you can change it, you just press the no. And
If you don't vote, you're locked out.
You're not locked out until it hits the 30.
That's what I'm saying.
That's right. Then you're locked out, right. Now, for those people who want to press some, like let's say that you want to abstain, but you're afraid that I have to press a button. Well, then there's a button that you can abstain, okay? But if you wanted to abstain, you could just not press anything at all. But just in case you did, oh, I don't know if I pressed yes or no, then press abstain. Then you can press to abstain, and then you're all set. So,
I guess I do have a question.
Yeah.
When you speak with the other moderators, I
Right.
should say, did they give you any feedback as far as was there better participation at town meeting? I think that's one thing that we always hear, a lot of complaints, people feel like, either they're rushed or they're trampled or they can't get to the microphone or whatever, or they don't feel like they can vote exactly the way they feel. So I guess the question is, if right now we're getting 140 people roundabout at town meeting, annual town meeting, do you think that that would increase if we were to introduce these voting tools?
good question. It might. It might.
And then I guess would it double or would it increase by 10%? I guess that would be an important question.
The other moderators, I don't think they're saying that it's like doubled or anything like that. It's really not going down, from my understanding. If anything, it might go up a little bit. What they are saying is this, and this is kind of a surprising thing, and this is something that might make you think that it's a good idea. What they're saying is that the conversation that's happening before the vote seems to be a little bit different. It seems to be less emotional. And they're not sure why, but they're thinking the reason is because they know that they can vote secretly after the fact. So therefore, the discussion, they've said, has become less emotional. I know, that's how it's like, that's like an interesting, and that surprised the moderators when they said it. They didn't expect any difference before the voting, but many are saying that the discourse is better, okay?
That's interesting.
So then it gets back to, okay, when is it that you have the discussion? Controversial issues, let's say, or whatever. So what we have to think about as a community is how often do we have those types of issues where we feel the need to do that. Now, getting back to your initial comments, some of the things you said, I was thinking to myself, if people are saying that, they need to talk to me. Because if people are feeling rushed, I need to hear that, okay? And by the way, that's the biggest balancing act every single moderator has to do. On the one hand, the complaint, oh, the meeting takes too long. On the other hand, well, I didn't have a chance to get up and talk. Well, if you come to enough meetings, you kind of know how it works. My hope is that any complaints that are coming along those lines are from people who maybe have never been to a meeting before and they just don't know how it works yet. But for the people who've been coming for a while, I'd like to think that they feel like there's a good balance there, okay? Sometimes the moderator's the last one to know, who knows, okay? But, real good question though, It's trying to find that balance.
I will say, David, you are very accurate, because there was a standing vote recently, and I don't remember the article. It was probably 2 or 3 meetings ago. And to me, it sounded like a 50-50. And people were grumbling in the crowd, and they did a standing vote. I believe it was on the no side of the vote, and it was a 60-40. So it was pretty clear, it was pretty clear, and you had it called right, so.
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
To
And
your credit.
And not to belabor that, but for the people out there who think, oh, that was a majority. Well, guess what? It kind of sounded like it was a majority to me too, let's say hypothetically. I have to be 100% sure. So I can't think, oh, 60-40. What I'm hearing's got to be like 70-30, at least for me to say,
Right.
that's a majority. Oh, by the way, if it's 2/3, it has to be like 90-10 in my mind for me to say a 2/3. Now, here's the tricky thing. If it's a 2/3 and it sounds like it's just a majority, then that's a loss. Now, people go, oh, wait a minute, no, it's a 2/3 vote, guys. There was clearly the no's were louder than the yays. So if I'm standing, the 2/3 does not have a chance. Do you understand what I'm trying to say there?
Yes.
So, yeah, so.
My big question is about the cost, because I think we've heard anywhere from 9,000 a town meeting to 80,000 a town meeting. So
Yeah.
do you have any sense? I know, Derek, I think you've talked to some other people about the cost of this and how that works.
And the costs may have come down, okay, which always happens with technology. The costs do tend to come down, but
Well, I mean, when I worked in Plymouth, they had a representative town meeting,
Oh,
so
yeah.
to your point, they knew exactly how many clickers they needed, which is about
Right.
140.
Yeah.
And they rented it annually, and it cost them, I think it was around $7,000-8,000 a year to rent it for both annual and
Oh, wow.
special town meeting.
Was that 7-0?
7,000.
Oh, I thought you said
that's,
7.
hey,
It was $7,000, $8,000 a year. So that was to rent it. Grafton owns the product,
Okay.
and so I reached out to them and trying to get a sense of would they be willing to rent it. They said yes, but they hadn't given me a cost.
Okay.
I think if we were to go down that road, one of our challenges in town hall would be that the technical aspect of it, not having individuals trained, because I have seen in my time in Plymouth that they've had a lot of technical difficulties, and they have staff from the company they're renting from who are there to try to troubleshoot those issues. So if we don't have that staff because we're renting from Grafton, then I would find that as one of my first concerns.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, I don't know how it works for open town meeting. In Plymouth, they had the person's, so you had a number assigned to the clicker, and that was associated with the person's name. And so when you hit yes, your name would flash up on there saying, Derek said yes to that. And so people knew, the good thing was they knew that their vote that they wanted was logged correctly. But again, I think that some folks have thought about this as a way to allow folks to have this private, secret ballot without having any fear that someone's going to think differently of them. So if we were to go down that road, I would question how we could ensure that their vote was taken through some type of electronic means.
yeah, when it comes to open, they can make sure it's anonymous.
They can.
They can. That's a guarantee. As a matter of fact, what you're talking about, they actually add, okay, let me put it to you this way. If I get clicker 100, let's say, it's an open town meeting, it's registered somewhere that number 100 voted yes or no on something. But then once somebody presses the clear button, after the moderator says, that's it, then it's gone. So you can clear that stuff. For the
All right.
representative, it keeps it. Why? Because that's what's supposed to happen, because the representatives are supposed to, because the people are supposed to know how their representatives voted. So it's a question of, for the representative, they keep the data, they log the data.
Right.
But you can just as easily clear that data,
Right.
okay, by just pressing that button.
No, I guess my concern is for open would be that if I hit yes, how do I know that it registered yes? And I've
That's right.
seen in representative town meeting where some people have stood up and said,
Right.
I hit yes on this, and I just saw my name flash no.
Ah, I got you.
So that's the,
Right.
and so if you don't see your name
Yeah.
flash or your number, your clicker flash, how do you know that what you press is actually what was tabulated? And I don't know.
And that's one of the problems
I
with
mean,
it.
obviously,
Exactly.
before we would ever do something like this, we would make sure that we understood those kind of questions.
Yeah,
right? Like
that's right.
That's probably the fundamental question,
Yes.
besides cost, is how do you make sure that people have confidence and trust in the system? That's
Right.
clearly the number one thing people are
Right.
gonna want.
Yeah.
So, it's not worth us
And
even hypothesizing.
it is
It's gonna
something-
come down to the equipment and whoever's running it for us, whoever
Right.
is that technical support. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's who
Yeah, I
we
mean, I
trust.
think I don't know, I think we just
Yeah.
we would definitely need to know that.
Parts.
Yeah. It is something that happened, and I'm not gonna mention the town because it would be kind of embarrassing to them, but I was reading about something that happened in one of the towns where open town meeting, so everyone got their clickers, right? And somebody noticed that people went to the restroom, they left their clickers on the chair. So, someone could have picked those up and voted. Follow what I'm saying? They have all this really fancy technological know-how. And what does somebody do? Well, a couple of clickers here, let me see, is anybody watching? Now, we all know that there's a person with a cell phone watching you all the time. So someone took a picture of the clicker sitting on the chair. It's like, wait a minute,
That
there's a
blows
problem.
the confidence right out the window.
There you go, okay, so it's the kind of thing, now, that town has since dealt with that issue. And they now announce to everybody, listen, you get your clicker, you have to keep it, you can't leave it sitting on the chair. If you go to the restroom,
You can actually vote from the restroom, they said, you know. But my point being, those little things like that, again, it's a confidence thing. You just have to let people know that. Don't leave the clicker lying around, okay? And when you leave, obviously, you have to hand it back in. You know, so. Now, for that particular evening, it's registered who got what clicker at an open town meeting. But the next meeting, if you don't have the same clicker, you're gonna get a different clicker, because it doesn't have which it is, so.
That's
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, we gotta figure out the price and some other things.
So, yeah, I mean, again, not to drive this point home, think about the need. Is there a need, okay? Because if there's not, you have to really talk about whether it's worth it or not if the need doesn't really exist. So you have to kind of really think about that. At least in my opinion, you really have to think about that particular question as well.
I mean, I haven't taken a strategic poll, but I've absolutely heard multiple times from people, that are uncomfortable voting publicly.
Really, okay.
Because of people around that are their neighbors and
Sure.
friends, et cetera. So
Okay.
I've heard people say that. I've also heard people that are small business owners say they don't even bother going to town meeting because they're not gonna vote publicly on anything because they're afraid that it could affect their business if somebody disagrees with them. So those are just examples that I've heard directly. Now, that may not be a representative sample because I didn't have clickers, but
Good point.
that's
Speak with some small business owners.
And just so you know,
Sometimes it helps, sometimes it hurts.
So just, I mean, it's out there, so there's certainly, how many, whether more people would come or not, I don't think it's gonna, we're not gonna double the size of town meeting, we're not gonna, most 90% of votes, it's not gonna matter, but, there is that sentiment out there, at least among some people.
and I'm
Few
hearing
would
none
be-
of that.
Yeah.
So I wish people would let me know that. And maybe I can understand why they don't, because they just feel like, oh, we do what we do, I don't want to tell you.
It's a
I
large,
don't want
it's a large investment for one or two votes a meeting.
to think about it like that, right.
And I'm sitting here now looking around and I'm saying, well, it's Mr. Mateo and myself, Mr. Marchand, we're business owners, and I don't think we'd give a damn what anybody thought. We'd vote over how we wanted to vote. It ain't gonna stop me.
It's probably true, right?
None of you were the people I spoke with.
All set?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Jim, what?
Mr. Chairman, my just 2 cents on this before you go. I don't see any cost benefit out of this at all. First one, we're talking about, we need this, we need that, and, $7,000, $8,000 a couple of times a year for every town, you're gonna do it for every town meeting?
I think I would look at this and say, I think the interesting concept is when you have a big ticket item that you think is gonna be hotly contested, I think that would be the time where you spend that money. If you had something,
Can we do that? Can
see,
we?
that'd be an interesting question. Can you do it just term? If we had a big ticket item that was coming up and we know it's gonna be a hot button topic, that's the time where I think it would really give people that confidence to come to meeting and not feel like there's gonna be any recriminations regardless of how they vote.
Some towns have talked about that particular issue, and I don't know if anybody does that yet, and that might be a rationale for quote unquote renting it, especially if it could be done for a small amount of money, okay? But even then, you have to make sure that people have the confidence that it's gonna work out okay.
Right.
But then the flip side to that is this. You might get pushback or criticism with regard to who is it that decides what that issue is. What's gonna be that controversial?
I think you board of selectmen. I think that's an easy answer.
Right, but then let me say this, you're the guys who'll have to deal with the slings and arrows. When someone says, wait a minute, I thought this other thing is a controversial, but you guys didn't think it was? Who are you to decide what is and is not a controversial issue? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the thing that you might have to think about with regard to that particular question. Because that is a good, legitimate question, and that's been talked about by some moderators, so.
Mr. Moderator,
Yeah.
once the meeting starts, it's not your meeting.
Once the meeting starts, I run the meeting.
Okay.
So
You, at that point, would it be your call, whether we're gonna do the button or we're not gonna do the button?
let me say this. The other thing that people definitely want to see is consistency. Okay, and what I want to see as moderator is consistency. So I'm not going to pick and choose whether.
If we're gonna do it, I would say, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it. If we're not gonna do it, we're not gonna do it. We're not gonna pick and choose what we're gonna do, because it becomes too controversial.
7, 8 years ago, there was someone who wanted to offer an opinion on a motion before the finance committee gave their opinion, and I said to them, that's not how we do it here in Upton. I'm not gonna change just because you wanna speak before the FinCom. And you might remember that, and then I asked you the question. You said, Mr. Moderator, I have no problem if he speaks in front of me, no sweat. So I allowed him to do that because I didn't want to change the tradition of how we do things. I didn't want people to think, oh, I'm picking and choosing how we do that. So to your point, consistency is very important because people need to say that we do things the same way so that they don't look at me and say, wait a minute, he's changing how he's doing things because he wants something to happen a certain way. So, all right? Okay.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so we're going to do a motion for the minutes. Jump around.
Make a motion that we approve the regular session meeting minutes from August 14th, 2018.
Second the motion?
You sure that's unanimous, Zach? Okay, no, anybody have anything for recognition?
I do not.
Town manager's report.
I'm just going to briefly talk about a few things. Real important is that, as we all know, the Harvey Trask land was gifted to the town as part of his estate. And that land went to town meeting in the spring to be accepted through town meeting, which it was. We were hoping to close on the land this summer, but we found out last week that that land in all the estate is being held up. Apparently, there's been a wrongful death charge against the estate, the Harvey Trask land. And so now the estate attorneys have to deal with this wrongful death case. So I know the Recreation Commission and others were looking forward to really thinking about that land and how they could use that land, especially through their recreation master planning process. So until the litigation is resolved, we will not be accepting that land anytime in the foreseeable future.
So that could be a couple years?
I don't know. We're on the sidelines watching this because we obviously, the good thing is we're not involved in the litigation. The bad thing is that we can't do anything until that litigation is resolved.
2 years to tear the house down, so.
So I just thought I'd let folks know publicly because I know that there's a lot of interest in that land and what the Recreation Commission may choose to do with that land sometime down the road. So, as far as DPW, there's been a lot, as you all know, there's been a lot of work going on in Public Works this summer, and because of that, we've held off on our street paving program. But I'm happy to say that as of this Thursday at 1:30, the DPW will be opening up bids for the road reclamation and the paving bids. So we're hoping to make an award this Thursday, and then soon thereafter start the $800,000 plus repaving project here in town. So hoping to see a lot of work happen this fall, and then we'll take a break during the winter months and finish up any remaining streets in the spring. And then Kelly's here who's been working with the Technology Committee. I think I may have mentioned last time that the Technology Committee did a really great job putting together an RFP to take a better look at our technology infrastructure here in town. And so, as we all know, we've been working with Rogan for the past 5 years. And so tomorrow night, they're going to open up, they're going to review these RFPs, probably then have a second round of review before they open up. So hoping, we're not sure we're going to save money on this, but we certainly expect to enhance our services and protect our IT infrastructure, which I think is most important, given we've had a number of attempts for hacks in our IT infrastructure, so we want to shore that up.
Russians?
Could be these days. And then one more. The water main project is now complete and under budget, so we saved approximately $3 million. So you'll probably see the RFS quote out there this week, but basically all they're doing at this point is just cleaning up the yards that may have been damaged during the project.
So run that by me again. You saved $3 million?
No, what, 300,000. So
Yeah, it is extra.
it was originally, did I say 3 million?
You said $3 million.
Oh, wow.
Everybody's getting excited.
You caught my attention, like $7,000 for clickers, $3 million.
So it was originally a
Make a motion.
It was originally a $1.3 million project and it came in at about $100,000.
Okay,
That's still good. Can you give us an update on the 4-log?
Yeah, so the 4-log has been complete, the pressure testing this week. Once the pressure test is complete, then they'll add that chlorinator I've been talking about. Once the chlorinator is added, then they will go ahead and turn that well back on. It's been off since last November, so it'd be a better part of 10 months without having that well online, especially with the hot heat we've had throughout the summer months.
Just one other thing there. Do we know the streets that they're paving yet, or is that?
They have a priority listing, but certainly once we have a contractor on board, we're going to go through the listing. As you know, there was an analysis done through our pavement management system, so we have a road rating. So we're going to go through the top streets that are in worse condition and move through them. But again, if one of our top streets is a mile long and it requires full depth reclamation, that's $1 million proposition. So for full depth reclamation costs $1 million per mile. So I don't expect that to happen right now, but just those are the costs associated with doing that.
So depending on how the bids come in, you can determine how many roads we can do.
Exactly.
And which roads we can do.
That's right. Or you can do 8/10 of a mile.
Do over 2 years.
I think it's your point that it's not always the worst roads that are going to get the attention, because your worst road might be a full reclamation, which is going to be $1 million, and that might be put on the back burner versus if we can do 4 miles of another road.
Right,
It just needs
and
pavement.
depending on the condition of that, and that could be a small side street that requires full depth, and we can certainly get that done within our budget.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Agenda item 6.1. The fall town meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 13th. We need to open the warrant tonight, so all the other town boards have time to discuss and propose any articles. The deadline for them to turn it in will be October 12th.
I'd like to make a motion that we open the special town meeting warrant, 7:45 of August 28th, and close it on October 12th at noon time.
Second. Unanimous action. Let's see, agenda item 1.2. We have a request from Janet, the Director of Elder Affair. During the tornado, she used the town's debit card to assist some residents. She provided Derek with a breakdown of what it was, and she's requesting a reimbursement of $5,969 out of the Pristine B account. Any questions or debate? Derek?
So we had 5 households that were displaced. And so we didn't have to provide assistance to all of the households, but one in particular had no place to go. So 4 originally had found other places to go, other family members. 2 residents did not have family members to lean on, so we provided hotel stay for 30 days for 2 individuals, and then so that lasted from about August 1st to August 31st, there about that time frame. And then there was another family that had stayed with folks in the Boston area during that month span, but because of school and the fact that this family was closing on a house locally, they needed a place to come back to so they could get their child back into school. So we provided them with a 30-day stay as well, to get them through that transition of the house closing and them able to move back into this new home that they purchased here in Upton.
Great. And we're fortunate as a community to have these trusts to help people in those situations, so a testament to the town's founding families. It's great.
I don't have
Very forward thinking.
I don't have the most updated numbers, but the ones I have, was a roughly around 745,000 in the account, or is it a little bit less?
I don't have to get.
Yeah, it was about 700,000.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we appropriate $5,969 from the Pristine B Fund. It's 82-300-3580-3401. Again, the amount of $5,969 to the Council of Aging.
I second that.
Unanimous action.
To Mr. Sunnis's point, the money in those trust funds are like land. They're making it anymore. So, I don't know.
Right.
they do make more money. And think of how
But the
nice and
trust funds don't,
Flaherty.
but the trust funds don't.
Yeah, but Flaherty Trust Fund, think about that. Wouldn't that be outstanding?
Right after the,
Paul
right
Flaherty.
right after the Metallian Trust.
Mine would have not a whole lot of numbers to the left of the decimal.
Dominic could be the first contributor.
You could donate that parking, that building right next door for parking. So, 6.3, the joint feasibility mission statement. I believe Derek provided us all with a copy of the joint feasibility. I don't have any questions. Do you have any questions, or?
I do not.
Mr. Downey?
No, I think it's pretty, for folks that haven't seen it, it's pretty broad. There's a lot of information there.
I just have one minor edit. Matt had a chance to review this, and under a quorum shall consist, it should state 3 voting members. So I think we missed the number 3. So just before you take a formal vote, that would be the only added change.
So at the very bottom.
Yeah. So the quorum shall consist of, should
Okay.
be 3 voting members.
7-member board, so 5 is a quorum, but we would need at least 3 voting members. Is the way that should read. Well,
Right, because you have 2 ad hoc non-voting members. So your voting group would consist of 5 individuals, but you need 3 for a quorum.
okay.
Any objections, Brett? No.
Okay. Make a motion that we approve the joint feasibility committee statement here as written with the following correction. That correction.
I second that.
Unanimous action? Let's see. At the last meeting, we appointed 3 members to the Library Council on Aging Feasibility Committee. Our goal was to have 5. We had 3 additional applicants. I see Deb's here, I believe Dave. If you'd like to introduce yourself, we know you're good enough. I mean,
Yeah, Debbie Amarelli,
Seems like
28
every
Merriam Way. At one of the previous selectmen's meetings, I heard that there was a citizen slot available. I talked to Matthew and submitted my application.
thank you, Deb. Mr. O'Brien?
I'm Dave O'Brien, live on East Street in town, been here 26 years. I'm also on capital budget. And I think it'd be great if somebody from capital budget was part of this as well.
I don't see Judith. Is Judith there? So, somebody want to make a motion?
I'll do it as one motion if that's
Yeah.
okay with everyone. I'd like to make a motion that we appoint David O'Brien from Capital Budget Committee and Deb Amarelli to the Joint Feasibility Committee.
Second that.
Unanimous action.
Thank you, Brooks.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, dear. Let's see, 6.5. Since the past couple months, we've been talking about developing a policy for residents to address their concerns during during our weekly or bi-weekly selectmen's meetings. We have a bunch of different drafts. Do you guys want more time to look at it? Or are you good to go with the?
I'm good.
KP, yeah. You good with the one from KP?
You know, I read that, there's a lot of dialogue in there. I think there's a few things, I guess, that we should, discuss, maybe the amount of time that we want to dedicate to the whole process, 15 minutes. I mean, is that too much time? And then how much do we want to give per speaker?
Well,
Is it 3 minutes? They recommend 3
KP
minutes?
deleted that 15-minute period. Yeah.
So we need to think about a number. Do you think that should be 10 minutes?
No, I think that what you were thinking of is 15 minutes. It'd be like from 6:30 to 6:45, not per
Well, a
speaker.
maximum, that's what I'm saying, is we have to decide what do we want for a maximum amount of time. Let's assume 5 people all want to speak,
Right.
and we give them all 3 minutes each. That's your 15 minutes. Do we want that to be the amount of time? And
Yeah,
a 3-minute?
I interpreted it the way it was written, that it was essentially the pleasure of the chair to manage the public comment period, and that we would set a standard of 15 minutes and 3 minutes per person, no more than that if there were more time in the 15 minutes that were available, then the chair could offer the person a second option to speak. So that would limit any one person's time to 6 minutes.
I see they deleted it.
But then there would be a maximum of 15 minutes. But I would think that the chair's pleasure, that time could be extended or reduced depending on what was on the agenda for that meeting.
Set up 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
So I guess those are the questions I had. Did we like those numbers? And I guess the other, just so that everybody can understand, if no one chooses to speak at that designated time, do we just close it? Or do we hold it open for a few minutes?
No, we just be like a regular agenda item. If nobody's there, we just keep going.
Okay. And that'll be a asked question, so.
Yeah.
I'll go with KP's one.
I'm good.
Okay.
You okay? So I make a motion that we approve the public speech, public comment policy submitted by KP Law, as revised by
Lauren Goldberg.
Lauren Goldberg, thank you, and put that into public policy.
Second motion?
Unanimous action.
Do you want to take a second and decide when we first introduce it? I guess we don't have to do that now.
We'll put on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the policy is available to anybody that wants to see it. So it's a public policy. Anybody that's interested can view it, look at it, read it anytime.
We have all our policies listed on your webpage too.
Yeah.
So I have.
Great.
Item 6.6 is MPT is a laboratory. Their goal is to open a lab in town with their sole purpose to test cannabis for purity. They do not plan on doing retail or any type of cultivation. They are hoping that they can work with the BOS in order to obtain a letter of non-opposition so they can begin the application process with the state and try to find a suitable location in town. They are projecting a pilot contribute to the town of around $60,000 per year. So, let's see. So have you guys read the pilot or have you read the?
I have, certainly $60,000 a year, and this would be, commercial investment in town, so that would be certainly appealing to me.
So my thing is, I'm not ready to make any decisions until after September 12th to kind of get a feel of what the community wants. I mean, but out of all the things to go for, I would support a lab versus like a place selling it or a grow facility.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. Any other type of, this would be certainly the least invasive, I would think, on the citizens. So,
I think it would be premature for us to issue a letter of non-opposition prior to the town voting on the medical and recreational marijuana bylaws in the fall town meeting.
So you just,
So just let them know we're gonna hold
yeah, until fall town meeting.
until after fall time meeting?
you said after September 12th. Do you want to see what the, get a sense for the pulse of the community at September 12th, or do you want to wait until November?
It's hard to tell, it's, I think you gotta wait until see actually how people vote.
Yeah, I would be only, just so you know, I understand your position, that this particular laboratory will probably have come and gone by the time we take a formal vote at town meeting. They're actively pursuing places to set up a location as soon as possible. And as you know, they've already issued
What
their
happens
first
if we-
retail marijuana facilities in Massachusetts. So these types of laboratories are trying to get in the door as quickly as they can as they see these retail facilities have opened up.
What happens if we sign a letter and then the townspeople vote a different way?
Well, again, I could follow up on that, but I can imagine we can always rescind. No, it's a letter of non-opposition, we're not gonna fight them.
As a board of selectmen, it doesn't mean that the town has to support it at town meeting.
Right, and you could, at town meeting, they could, in theory, zone it out, they could take a formal vote and zone it out. But again, any prohibition taken at town meeting must go to the ballot as a referendum. So it's a two-step process.
I'd hate to see $60,000 walk out the door.
Yeah, the other thing too is they could be approaching many towns, So even if we give a letter of no opposition, assuming the taxpayer thought it was a good idea, it still doesn't mean that they're definitely gonna open up shop and after. Still have zoning issues, you know, it's obviously a commercial entity.
Can you check with Lauren about that?
Yeah, I can speak with Lauren. Our next meeting, the board's next meeting is September 18th, I believe. The meeting will be held, the marijuana meeting will be held on September 12th. So do you want to consider having them come in on the 18th? We'll have hopefully a better sense of the community's feelings. They'd be flying in, they're not a local community, they're not a local laboratory, I think they're from California, off the top of my head. Do you want to schedule them the 18th and have them come in, answer a lot of questions that you may have that may come out of the meeting on the 12th? And this way, at least they're programmed in for the 18th. And if you choose at that meeting not to offer a letter of non-opposition, at least we're not closing the door, I guess is my point. Like, we're still at least learning from them, hearing from them, seeing it's something that we're willing to support.
I mean, I'm looking at it as this is a laboratory environment. My biggest concern would be waste. You know, what would the weight would be? Similar to medical waste? Would it be, you know, what would they be discharging? If it's a pretty sterile environment, I'm not sure, you know, I'm not sure that I have any opposition with it.
Isn't this going to be regulated by DEP too?
Yes.
Cannabis Control Commission.
Yeah, Cannabis
Whoever
Control
it is.
Right, they're already issuing licenses right now for the retail sale. So, again, that's why these laboratories are trying to get a foothold here in Massachusetts, because they see what's happening.
There was another one.
Kiwanis Beach Road.
Kiwanis Beach Road. All these were approved by the voters at the annual town meeting last year. So, any questions?
No.
Remember at town meeting, they talked, we held a section of money for stuff. Has all these roads been approved by the DPW director?
Yeah, everything's been approved. Planning board has signed off on the Mylar plans. DPW director has reviewed these. We have to approve these this evening. They need to be executed by the board and then registered on Thursday at the Register of Deeds. We have until Friday to get this accomplished. We'll miss the 120-day window.
Now, there's an open space easement here. Do you want to do this as two separate agenda?
I think we can take them all as one.
Yeah, just to remind us what the open space easement was.
The open space easement is really the infrastructure, like below ground for the streets and
I think there's water retention there, isn't there?
Yeah, I'm trying to think where they have the utility boxes, all that stuff, that all has an easement on it, as they described. Conservation Commission has to sign the open space easement.
There's a sign at the end of that cul-de-sac that says walking trail, but I've never tried to walk on it. Is that part of the open space?
I have to look at the plans. See what it consists of.
There may be, that's right.
I have to look at my lap plans. My lap plans are upstairs if anyone wants to review them.
Okay. Okay. I can make a motion that we accept Kiwanis Beach Road, Blueberry Road, and Dogwood, and also the open space deed as well.
I second that.
Unanimous action. You guys have any new business?
I do not.
I have not. List of stuff that are on the future agenda from Brett. If you have anything, just shoot me an email. Or I can shoot Derek an email, then I'll get it from there.
Okay.
Anybody out in the audience have anything?
There was some capital issues that you raised. You raised a question about, I think, one of the discussions regarding Recon.
Yes.
I think at some point, it may be a good idea to have them come in, talk about summer, talk about actually some of the reporting issues that we have regarding town meeting and the annual report. That may be something that we should bring forward for the next meeting or sooner rather than later.
There we go, that's one of the future topics.
Maybe it would be good.
Yeah. Oh, my recommendation would be next meeting.
Oh, yeah.
The only reason I say that is because the warrant's only gonna be open for less than 8 weeks. So any potential articles you may be considering, you're gonna wanna have those conversations in advance of the close of the warrant.
Okay. February 18th, then.
Anything else, Brett?
Not other than what was in the email?
Motion to adjourn?
Okay. Make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Yeah, second.
Sir, if you have free cash in